Thank you very much, David. One point I'd like to make, just reacting to that, that's a lot of progress and a lot of work obviously done, but also think of this, that's a lot of investment, not just financial investment, but people investment that ExxonMobil has made. And when Dave is making this kind of call for people to participate, I think it's good that ExxonMobil has shown that level of commitment. Now, our next speaker is going to be Igor Stolz. Igor is from Evonik. He has been a leader in the not just control system and control systems support, but also in their MTP pilot programs, which is what he's here to talk about. Igor, thank you for coming.
Harry, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, good to be in Orlando. It's my first time at the ARC conference, and I'm happy to get the opportunity here to share our experiences that we have collected over the last year and a half on that MTP development, standardization. And I will talk you through my slides. We'll start with some motivation. What is modularization? What we think modularization is? I can tell you right away, it's not slicing your plant and putting it on a truck and moving it somewhere and then wiring everything up. That's not what we think modularization is with respect to the MTP. And then we'll focus on the automation part of it. And I'll also have some pictures from some pilots that we built that I will explain to you. And then in the end, we will see how that fits in also with OPA. So first of all, Evonik, I don't know, who knows Evonik? Hands up, who has heard of Evonik? Wow, amazing. Is that because we sponsor the soccer club? Or, yeah. Okay, good. I'll let people know it's worth the money we spend there. Well, we are currently structured this way here. We're a specialty chemical company. We have different fields of operation, nutrition and care, resource efficiency, performance materials. Myself, I'm from the engineering group. I'm heading electrical instrumentation group. We're mainly dealing with CapEx projects, larger CapEx projects in Germany, also worldwide. We are in that technology and infrastructure. Always a long name, takes long to check out the hotels. Performance materials, we just sold off most of it. We're just buying other companies. So modularization is also in here. It makes it easy to take things in and out, and that's kind of the idea behind the modularization as well. I have to show this picture. My previous boss, who also happened to be the head of NAMUR for several years, he kind of phrased this cross. I think it's going to be named after him, the Orton cross. You have the asset life cycle here. We're doing product development. We develop a process. We design a plant. We build the plant. We operate the plant. And eventually, but that can be like 60 or 70 years later, we all know we'll dismantle it. And then we have on the horizontal, we have our supply chain. And a lot of digitalization is happening in all of those areas. This really helps to focus, put focus on the areas that we are currently working on. So for Evonik, we try to, as a company in the process industry, to define what is actually Industry 4.0 or this whole digitalization mean for process industry as compared to the discrete industry. And we kind of defined three major areas of activity. One is architecture, system architectures, open architectures. Another one is a data model over the life cycle. If we want to be better and if we want to build the digital twin at one point, we need a good data model for that. For the twin, but also for the operations. The third activity that is the content here of this presentation is the modularization. And yeah, what are the challenges we're facing? Why we think modularization is the answer is we see things become more faster in the market. There is more and more requirement to come out with new products. Anybody heard about the 50% idea? 50% idea. It's not ask your vendor to pay half price. It's to save 50% of the time that it takes from, let's say, a product idea to actually selling the product. So we want to save time, and how can that be done? And then there is more and more customization. People don't want 1,000 tons of this one powder anymore. They want small amounts, but they want it in red, they want it green, and maybe they want it red and green. So we have to be more flexible, we have to be faster, and then obviously we always have to be more cost competitive. We have to spend less money and do more. And the answer to those three challenges is actually modularization, because that gives us the flexibility and ease of the functionality. And one other thing that actually goes with it to be fast and cost competitive and not reinvent the wheel is we need to standardize. If we want to work with modules, the module need to follow some kind of standard. So how would this look like if I just put a plant here with a couple of blocks? Each block is a module, and the modules, I said, they are not just defined by their dimensions, but they are process modules. Process equipment modules, and they all have a function, and they should be reusable and have standardized interfaces. And that addresses all the different issues that we've seen before. We need capacity flexibility, so we could just number up. The module is not going to produce those 1,000 tons, maybe just 100. If we need 500, we put 5 modules. So by numbering up, we get flexibility in the capacity. We get flexibility in the kind of product we need. If the product needs to have a different property, then that might be accomplished by adding just another module. Then on the other side, we might get different feedstock quality than we had before, or maybe in a different location. Then we can address that by adding another feed module to it. And then, Champions League, if we have a set of modules that we own in our company, and we maybe have them somewhere in a stock, then we might be able to ship that module wherever is needed. Obviously, here there are more challenges, because you need to take care of all the different standards that you might encounter in the different locations. So this is a quick overview of what's in for you, depending on where you are, whether you are an automation vendor, you are the plant owner, you are maybe the module vendor or the system integrator. We all see different advantages here for all those different players on the market. Just to pick out maybe one, if we traditionally buy modules, or we call them package units from vendors, sometimes we like to integrate their logic into our main control system. And they don't always like that, because they have to disclose the logic, so we can actually copy that into our main system. And why don't they like it? Because it's their IP. So if we take that modular approach here, then that IP can be protected. So there is something in it for everybody who is kind of playing in the market. Modularization obviously is not just the module that we're buying. We can only be, if we want to be 50% faster from the beginning of the idea to the actual product, we have to do that. We have that modular mindset, not just in the fabrication of the plant, but also in the engineering and maybe even in the process development. So we get away from designing from scratch the processes. We actually configure. We configure different modules. We configure the P&IDs, and then in the end, we pick the corresponding modules. And maybe we might be doing this for the pilot plants, and then we might pick similar but maybe larger modules for the actual production. So that's kind of shown here on the left-hand side. I will focus on now on the automation part. And NAMUR was mentioned. NAMUR, the user organization of a lot of companies, chemical process companies in Germany. I think by the end of last year, NAMUR had 165, I think, member companies. And they got behind that idea of that module type package and said, okay, we need to standardize. If we want those different modules to talk to each other, to talk to a supervisory system, to work together, we need a set of standards. And this is a funny story to tell here, or an interesting story, because what we've done or what we've seen in the past was often that, okay, there's an idea, we need a standard, you put all the good people together and you give them some money, and then you wait 5 years. And then after 5 years, you have a standard. And then you have the standard, but then there is no products. And the vendors, they look at the users and say, well, where's your order? And then the user said, well, where's your product? Well, we just heard, product needs to go on the way, and it's not that easy if you just wait a long time for the standard, and then it's like the reverse hen and egg problem. So we wanted to avoid that. So we sliced that standard. We defined different areas that we thought we needed standardization, which is, we need for HMI and process control, alarm management, safety. All those areas, they need some kind of standard. And we started small. We started with the first 1-2 standards. And once they were available, or even before they were finalized, we actually started piloting. And that kind of gave a closed loop. We could feedback information, experiences from those pilots back to the guys that were writing the standards. And that brought on board the vendors as well, because the vendors said, okay, I have a prototype for your package controller, and you can build a module with this strategy here. And then the DCS vendor said, okay, we also have a prototype where we can actually import this description here. So it created a dynamic that we still don't have a finished standard here, but we are very close. There are the prototypes available from the vendors, and very close to having actual products released with the portions of the standard that are finalized. So if you're still wondering what is this MTP actually, I like this analogy here. Well, we all probably have computers at home, and we have a printer, and nobody is really worrying anymore whether that printer can work with your computer, because you just plug it in. You just plug in your USB, or maybe you do it wireless now, and you have a driver that loads on the computer even automatically, and then your computer knows the services that that printer is supplying. It can print, it might still be able to fax, or a lot of them can scan. So it's basically publishing its services to the computer. And that's what we are envisioning also on the MTP. Sometimes it's referred to plug and produce. MTP is more or less that device description, that driver for that module that I want to operate, that I want to maybe incorporate into a larger system, or that I want to be able to function with some other modules. So when I buy a module, it comes with that module description, and then I'm able to load that into the engineering system of my supervisory control that I'm using in that facility. So that's the idea behind it. Also, the maybe some naming here. The HMI, or that system that is coordinating the different modules, we call it the process orchestration layer. So now what we went ahead and we wanted to test this, as I mentioned earlier, to get some speed into the standardization, and also to show the marketplace, the vendors, that there is an interest and that there is a use case. So I will show 3 different examples of implementations that we have done at Evonik using the MTP. And well, the best place to do some fail fast and learn is in a lab environment. So that's where we started. We have a lab in Marl, in one of our facilities, where we are running some pilot plants. And there is obvious also, there is definitely a good use case for some modules, because in the old days you built up that pilot plant, and when it was finished, maybe after 3 or 4 months, you didn't need it anymore, or a year, it was disassembled. Now the idea is not to disassemble it, but just to disconfigure the modules, put the modules to the side if you don't need them, or just reconfigure them for your next pilot plant. So we also wanted to see whether the vendors were really implementing that open standard. So the best way to do it is not to buy a controller and the supervisory system from one vendor. If you buy the whole all your equipment from one vendor, that one vendor will make it work. Whether it's according to that standard that you've just written, you might not even find out. They will always make it work. So the idea was that we wanted definitely to mix and match the different vendors. In this example here, we had Vago as a PLC. Vago actually is the company that started this idea with MTP at the NAMUR General Conference in 2014. They came out with that concept first, and then NAMUR said, okay, we need to back that as a large user organization, because it's just one company trying to push this, it's not going to be as powerful. So they supplied the controllers. The technology for communication is OPC-UA, and on the top as that process orchestration layer, we're using a software here that ABB has developed for that purpose of making different modules work together. And we learned quite a bit from that first pilot here. Orca is actually a publicly funded project from the German government. So also the German government said, okay, Industry 4.0 might be a competitive advantage for Germany, so there is some funding available. So they are investing, they are helping here to get to some first results when it comes to MTP integration. And the next slide shows that, gives a little bigger picture of that configuration interface. What you're seeing here is actually, those are the different modules. The lines can be seen like the connections. That's the physical connections between those different modules. Could be pipes or hoses. And you see some kind of recipe sequence control on the left-hand side. That's how we envision that the interaction between the different modules is working, because as I said, it's going to be more based on services. That module has some service that it offers. It's not making transparent all the different equipments. We don't want to open that valve here or look at the pressure here on your printer. You don't want to command every single jet. You just want it to print. So that's the idea behind this as well. We just want to use the services of the module, and then we need to define what is happening. If that's in a run mode, or if it's not in a run mode, if that filter is in a backflush mode, how should the other modules behave? So all this will be configured in that process orchestration layer. So that was one use case. Then we said, okay, we'll try something different. We'll try a different PLC vendor. And we thought, okay, IT companies have great solutions. OPA is going that way as well. And we said, okay, why should I buy from my typical DCS vendors software licenses for that supervisory control? Maybe there are some other opportunities here. And our company, Evonik, we just decided to implement an IoT platform in our productions, and we said we want to use the ThinkWorks platform from PTC, based in Boston. A lot of people probably know them. So we talked to PTC and asked them, well, here is that standard. Can you implement that into your product so you can import those device descriptions into your software? And that's what they did. And the nice thing is that module comes with a device description. You load that into the system, would be ThinkWorks, could be another DCS, and then the graphic just builds up. The graphic builds, the description of the graphic is in that device description, and then the system builds it up with their own library. So you don't really have to do any work on the graphic sides, and then all the data points are connected with OPC UA, and you see live data. So I have another picture here of those different modules. There is some future work here on the papers that are still in the process of being finalized. So obviously, the companies are following up. As soon as a standard is finalized, then that will be incorporated into the product or into the prototypes. This is a glance at 3 different modules that we're also running in our lab facility. You have a reactor module. You have I think this might be an evaporation module. We have feed modules. This one is a nice one. You can see it's a process equipment assembly, but within that assembly, you also have like a functional module as well. There's a frame within the frame, and this one is neat because we're testing different reactor designs that are actually printed with a metal 3D printer. I think we are the first in Germany to have a metal 3D printer that is also capable to do pressure-rated vessels. So we can print reactors with whatever design we think is suitable for that process, and then this module can just be pulled out, and another reactor can be pulled in. Automation, as I said, it's encapsulated in every module. You see it at the bottom. That's not what the in techs typically like, but that's how they found it was the best. They had it on the side, they had it on the top, they had it in the middle of the module. In the end, what came out in the current, let's say, version that we're building modules, and it is at the bottom, and you can open that and get to the PLC controller that's in there. Yeah, and the last use case that we actually also published about because it's we put this one in a real facility. and we had a big investment project in Singapore, a real plant, and we said, okay, we want to implement MTP also in such an environment. Also, it all started, and Yokogawa came to us and said, okay, now we have actually an importer for MTP. Why don't you use it? And I said, oh, okay. I'll find an application for it. And yeah, that plant in Singapore had a lot of package units, utility package units. We said, okay, we'll start with that. We found one of those package unit vendors, the company Angie. They were also quite interested to work with us, to standardize more on their equipment. Also, the package unit vendors, they don't really have a lot of fun discussing all the bits and bytes every time they sell an equipment to different vendors. Is it this byte first or this byte first? We don't want to do this. We want to discuss the services that the modules actually supply. So they were using Siemens PLCs. Siemens developers helped quite a bit here to help the module supplier to create that MTP file. And then that MTP file was imported into the Yokogawa system. We tested that in Germany. I said testing is the reason why we do this. We can do the early testing. We realized OPC UA standard is not that uniquely defined that everybody understands everything the same way. So the first time we plugged those two systems together, nothing happened. Because they were different interpretation of that standard, but that's exactly why we did it. Well, that's what everybody experiences if you buy package units and they come to the site, you plug them in, and how often does everything work the way you expected it the first time? Probably not. Package units for me is always like Christmas. Now you get that box, you unpack it, and that's not what I wanted. And then it's never been properly described. The documentation is always done as an afterthought. So yeah, and then it's when you don't have the time, when you're commissioning your plant. So here we did all this testing in Germany. We sent that to the site, and the guy who was used to it, he had commissioned another 20 package units, and he went through all this trouble. And then he came to this package unit, and it really worked as envisioned. He plugged in those two cables, data, power, and then the graphic on the DCS, that's the screen. The graphic came up automatically. The data points were showing as intended, and he was overwhelmed. He said, wow, this actually works. So that was a nice proof. It's a small application, but it works, and it works in that industrial environment. Of course, in parallel, we're still running the Profibus that we had envisioned in the first place. But the OPC UA with the MTP is running just fine. Yeah, back to the standards. I mentioned we need standards on the development of the process. So we have the chemical engineers here defining their standards to make modularization happen. And on the automation side, we have our standards, the VDE, which is the German Engineers Association. They, together with NAMUR, are writing on that standard. It's that 2658, and also a good step forward, an important step forward, is that it was accepted as a new working item proposal also for a new IEC standard. So this MTP standardization will eventually also become an IEC standard. And this also shows how this was possible, because it's not just one company or a couple of suppliers that can make this happen. You really need the community to work together. And NAMUR is here as that organization that had the, let's say, brought out the idea in the first place. There are many different working groups established in NAMUR, and they all created like subgroups to work specifically on MTP standardization. The VDI we just saw here, that are writing that German standard. ZVE, Don mentioned them earlier. Very important to have that cooperation also with the associations that represent the OEMs and the module and the equipment manufacturers. VDMA, that's another big one. So this could only work because all those, they came together, they joined forces, and they are trying to finalize those standards. As I said, we're still in the middle of it, but we're maybe halfway through, and we're very close to having the first products in the marketplace. Yeah, and this tries to show some how this could actually fit in. How does it correlate with the OPA? The ideas often behind that are quite similar. Those modules here, you see that's also kind of modules here, the distributed control nodes. We have that OPC bus defined. You have the real-time bus on the OPA side. And then what we call the process orchestration layer that kind of correlates with that advanced computing platform that has been defined by OPA. So those two concepts are not competitive. They're really adding up to something bigger. And I'll also share the summary with you. So we think we accomplished those to address those challenges: speed, flexibility, cost efficiency. It was only possible also within Evonik because it was really made a strategic effort. It was a strategic project. It had some good funding. I was able to put like one person full-time on this, because in the old days we've done things as a hobby on the side. I don't think we would be here if we had done it the same way on this effort here. You need people spend really their full focus on such a process. We have the first prototypes running. We cannot do it by ourselves. We need the peers, and NAMUR is a good group there to work with us, and public funding is definitely helping as well. As I said, I think it's a great success that we are working our way towards an IEC standard as well, and then we talk global. And the last thing I would like to mention here is there is a memorandum of understanding of cooperation between MTP and OPAF, and I think if we even join the forces internationally, both sides of the Atlantic, then we'll make this whole idea here happen, as it was mentioned earlier, to really get a step change somewhere, not just make things a little faster and a little bit better, but really make them quite different and much better than we've done in the past. So that closes my presentation.